Does your furry friend take over your bed every night? It's time to reclaim your space while giving them the comfort they deserve with the coldest, cozy dog bed. Don't wait. Check out the link in the video description to buy now on Amazon.
A cop at the site of the deadly MH17 crash has described the sheer horror of what became one of the world's biggest crime scenes. The Australian Federal Police, AFP, officers said kids' toys were strewn among body parts as today marks the tragedy's somber 10-year anniversary. Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 was a scheduled passenger flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur that was tragically shot down on July 17, 2014, while flying over eastern Ukraine. The Boeing 777-200ER had departed from Amsterdam Schiphol Airport and was en route to Kuala Lumpur International Airport. It was flying at an altitude of approximately 33,000 feet when it was struck by a surface-to-air missile, leading to the deaths of all 298 people on board, including 283 passengers and 15 crew members. Investigations determined that the plane was hit by a Buk missile system, a Russian-made, medium-range surface-to-air missile. What used to be a sunflower field in the village of Rybov, some 50 miles east of Donetsk, became a massive open-air graveyard. As families of those on board were having their worst fears confirmed in the days after MH17 came down, unarmed AFP officers were deployed into an active conflict zone patrolled by Russia-backed separatists. Their mission involved recovering the remains of the MH17 victims. They were met with a horrifying scene: bodies, personal possessions, and children's toys sprawled beside flaming debris, as far as the eye could see. Now, exactly a decade later, AFP Commander Brian MacDonald recalled the horrors he witnessed when trying to recover the 38 Australian victims. The veteran police officer who led the AFP team in Ukraine told the Force's podcast, "The crash site was huge. We knew we were going to have very limited time on the crash site. That became obvious early. The ability to get resources into the crash site was going to be really difficult for us, and the fact that we didn't have free access wherever we were because the reality soon hit us that the crash site was at the center of the conflict. So everything just became extremely difficult and sensitive and required a lot of diplomatic communications just to allow us to move." Nothing in MacDonald's decades-long policing career could have prepared him for when he encountered the crash site. He said, "Here is this dirty big plane wing just sitting sort of diagonally in this farm den. And it's just sitting there. You just don't forget something like that because it's just so out of place. How in the hell does that happen? I still remember to this day." The cop continued, "The stark reality of seeing it was quite confronting, and still to this day it's pretty emotional. There was fuselage, and I remember there's luggage, there's children's toys just strewn for probably more than a kilometer. You know you're there to do a job, but it's one of those things that you just remember the sadness of what it was. I was walking through and at one point I picked up some paperwork, which by coincidence it was the paperwork of one of the Australian families. There was fuselage, and I remember there's luggage, there's children's toys just strewn for probably more than a kilometer. And again, that's near some kids' stuffed toys and luggage and other things, and it just strikes you as just the horror the people on the plane must have gone through." But despite the horrors witnessed by the AFP officers, it was imperative they kept the mission front of mind: recover the bodies and look for evidence. "This was a ridiculously large crime scene," recalls Detective Sergeant Hilda Syrek. "I couldn't put tape around this whole, almost 50 square kilometer scene. I saw belongings everywhere. I saw bone fragments and body pieces across the whole crime scene, and it just made me realize what the last moments would have been like." MC Donald added, "We were in a humanitarian mission to try and collect body parts or other human identification factors to be able to ensure that we could identify all the victims of the crash. As evidence began to be uncovered, the downing of MH17 was looking more like a criminal act, and the crash site had just become one of the world's biggest crime scenes." The missile that hit flight MH17 was launched from an area controlled by pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. The Dutch Safety Board conducted an extensive investigation and concluded that the missile had